We are now joined by Mike Pompeo, Senior Counsel for Global Affairs here at the ACLJ. Of course, you know him as former U.S. Secretary of State and so much more. They played a clip from President Biden being interviewed, and this is when he kind of confirmed that they've been holding up shipments. But when you hear this, check out the level of confidence coming out of this president right now. Bite for.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons. We've held up the weapons. We've held up the one shipment that, as an old shipment, it was designed for. We've held that up.
And I quote, we've held that up, the weapons, we've held up the one shipment as an oil shipment has been designed. Old shipment. Yeah. We held that up. But at least the one thing you can say confirmed that this weapons shipment was delayed intentionally, and has pretty much said if they continue their strikes in Rafah, the U.S. is not going to supply.
This is stunning, and this is dangerous, and the whole world is watching. So this has a real impact on the relationship between the United States and Israel's capacity to defend itself. That's what the real focus is. But think about what's in the minds of Hezbollah today. Think about what's in the mind of the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Think about what's in the mind of the leadership of Hamas, who's sitting in tunnels under Rafah. They're all enormously encouraged. They cheered that interview. You should also think about students on campuses who think we caused this. Our chaos creation, our denying some students the capacity to live their lives, practice their faith, actually just get a basic education. That work that we did on these campuses influenced the President of the United States and has now caused him to break with a 75-year ally of the United States of America. The Israelis will get it right. They'll do the right thing. But the fact that the President of the United States spoke this way, spoke just the day after he'd given this full-throated support of the Jewish people and their rightful homeland, is indecent and truly dangerous.
It is stunning. It is shocking. I can't even imagine a situation, and maybe you could even tell me as someone who's been at least somewhat in that situation, other than politics, which at some point politics shouldn't be the answer. Getting votes should not be what determines what every presidential decision is to make sure you've solidified your reelection. Unfortunately, that feels where we are, because how could an American president, knowing they're still hostages, knowing they're still American hostages, seeing what's going on, how can they justify this? How can they justify doing this in a time when there are still Americans held hostage? There are still these terrorist organizations. They're firing, of course, on that dock that was built, the pier, the humanitarian pier. This is only, it seems like, for votes, and it's a sad state when that's the truth.
So I think two things. One, I do think there's a domestic political angle to this. I talked about these young people on campuses. There's no doubt he's thinking about the fact he needs to win Michigan to be reelected, and what's happening in Dearborn and Detroit. I think that's true. I would also say, and I think the folks who watch the ACLJ for a long time and who have supported it so deeply and importantly to defend Israel's right to do the right thing, I think this is also ideological from the Biden administration. Think about this. We've got a fellow named Robert Malley, who at the very beginning of the administration undid the very sanctions, the very pressure on Iran that had kept them from performing acts like we saw on October 7th, right? It was a deterrent model against Iran. And these folks, the Biden administration, Rob Malley's had his clearance suspended. He's clearly working on behalf of something other than the United States of America. I think, this administration suspended his clearance. This idea that you can work with the Iranians, and we've now encouraged them. This is another step in that chain. This is part of their ideology. It is the United States doesn't have the value set to actually defend things that matter to it. Israel is the problem child here. And if they just find a way to get along with the Palestinians, this would all go away. And gosh, if we talk to Iran a little bit more, we'd find peace and stability in the Middle East. That insanity, that ideology that is attached to that, I think is also part of this as well.
Mr. Secretary, you brought up the point that this confirmation of the pause of the shipment came the day after he gave, the Holocaust Memorial speech, where he said his commitment to Israel's security was ironclad. Do you also make any comparisons where the fact they decided to even do this was right after Congress passed more aid for Israel? Is there some sort of Capitol Hill infighting as well with the administration on who the administration is going to support?
Undoubtedly. Think about this. If you're a Republican member who said, no, I'm going to support this package, maybe you weren't as excited about some piece of it, but you knew that the support for Israel was an important part of American national security. You now feel like you were given a bait and switch, because frankly, it appears that you may well have been given a bait and switch. I also always think about what's Zelensky thinking today. Zelensky's got to be thinking, oh my goodness, if there's some protesters on a campus somewhere, this will all go away again. Or if you're Xi Jinping and you say, I think before I actually take on Taiwan, I think I want to go create organizations and build leaders and underwrite college campus protests and go build out in the Chinese diaspora a political voting base. This is a model that is deeply dangerous. And I don't think President Biden has begun to consider the ramifications that go far beyond the problem that we face on the ground today. I'll say this. I'm confident Israel will go do what they need to do. I'm confident they'll have the tools and set of capabilities to do that. But man, it gets really hard when your friend and ally, the United States of America, has basically told the world, we're out. We are not going to participate in this. We are not even going to allow the Israelis to do the necessary.
Absolutely. And you see that. You said that model can be made where protests can happen and support can be withdrawn or created, whether that was in Ukraine or whether that happened in Israel, in the sense of you can find humanitarian responses even if they are built upon lies. And I wanted to play this. We've played it now, both segments, because it's just insane. This is from, again, American Muslims for Palestine. I read you the About Us. It sounds very nice, very peaceful, historical organization. But this is what's coming out of 501c3 nonprofit organizations in America. Of course, we know probably where the messaging is coming from, but this is what they're preaching, which is this is the organizer for who? For, of course, things like the college campus protests. Take a listen.
Anybody who has any relationship or any support or any or identifies themselves as a Jewish person or as a Christian Zionist, then we shall not be their friend. I will tell you that they are enemy number one, and our community needs to recognize that as such.
Secretary Pompeo, you and I both said it. Once they start using Christian Zionists or Zionists, that means evangelicals. That means all of us. And then obviously for the Jewish people, he didn't even label Israelis or people who are supporting it. He just said anyone who identifies as Jewish plus any pretty much evangelical Christian in America are enemy number one.
Yep. Look, we've heard this language before. This is a anti-Christian, anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist rant that goes far beyond just the idea that, boy, it'd be good to get a ceasefire. This is the exact language that is used by the Ayatollah in Tehran. This is the exact language used by those who want to eliminate the nation state of Israel, and we should respond to it accordingly. The second thought is, as I was listening to him, I was thinking about exactly where this money is coming from and its deep connectivity. So when we talk about politics, we're not just talking about a set of votes in Dearborn. We're talking about some of the same people who are underwriting President Biden's campaign.
Absolutely.
And some of the Democrat senators. So this funding issue, where these protests are being generated and resourced, undoubtedly is deeply connected to the Democrat Party and to the Biden administration's political campaign as well.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo, for joining us. Incredible insight. Go to aclj.org to sign that petition right now. aclj.org sign. They're coming after you now as well. Okay, you got to stand up. aclj.org/sign.